Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
So I want to welcome you all to tonight's A Time for Truth show. We have a special show tonight, regarding a technology that's been applied in many different countries, especially down in Colombia, where a colonel actually applied it to change the whole country, called The Way to Happiness. Very simple, common sense guide to better living. When I was younger, I really never thought anything was necessary. I thought it was common sense. And I didn't realize a lot of what I had received as common sense came from my family, my upbringing. And I assumed that it was similar for everybody. And as life has gone on, I found out that that's not the case. And in the last year in our country, in 2020, we've seen the amount of turbulence, turmoil, and we look around, we say, why is that happening? And the reason it's happening is because there's not an agreement. Very simple thing, agreement. But, agreement is what causes a marriage either to stay together or to break up. Agreement is what causes a business partnership to stay together or to dissolve and go into attorney battles. So agreement actually is not such a simple thing, because if it was, there wouldn't be so much discourse and problem and conflict in life. So tonight, I'm going to present to you something that is actually very simple, but very powerful, and applied, it helps all of us. It's one thing I like about it is I'm a Jewish guy. My wife is a Catholic woman. I have friends who are Hindu, Buddhist, Protestant, Methodist, all different religions and different cultures, different creeds, different upbringing. And, what I like is something that all of us can apply, like water, like air, that we're not going to have any conflict or discussion about or debate, because we have enough of that in life already. So this common sense guide called The Way to Happiness was actually devised by a humanitarian who was a very talented man. His name was L. Ron Hubbard. And he was a musician, a navigator, playwright, investigated into the mind, sailed ships, charted the West Coast for the U.S. Army, was in intelligence in World War II. I don't know how the man ever slept. And he realized what was going on really globally. And so he made this guide, and it's been used all over the world. So the first thing we're going to do is show you a video, the introductory video about this way to happiness. And so the engineer will put the first video on, and here we go.
Happiness. True joy and happiness are valuable. If one does not survive, no joy and no happiness are obtainable. Trying to survive in a chaotic, dishonest, and generally immoral society is difficult. Any individual or group seeks to obtain from life what pleasure and freedom from pain that they can. Your own survival can be threatened by the bad actions of others around you. Your own happiness can be turned to tragedy and sorrow by the dishonesty and misconduct of others. I am sure you can think of instances of this actually happening. Such wrongs reduce one's survival and impair one's happiness. You are important to other people. You are listened to. You can influence others the happiness or unhappiness of others you could name is important to you. Without too much trouble, using this book, you can help them survive and lead happier lives. While no one can guarantee that anyone else can be happy, their chances of survival and happiness can be improved. And with theirs, yours will be. It is in your power to point the way to a less dangerous and happier life.
So there you go. Common sense, but very powerful. Because if you look at our last year, what were we missing? We were missing integrity. We were missing honesty. We were missing really a acknowledgement or an understanding of how much each one of us does for each other. If you really look at it, and sometimes I've done this when I fly into New York, and then you fly into New York and you go over all these boroughs and you see all these buildings and all these people. And I don't know if it's come across your mind, but I think when I'm up on the airplane, I go, my God, there's a guy down there who decided to be a fireman. And there's a lady who's running a pastry shop. And there's somebody else who's got, with some other people, a Chinese restaurant. And then there's somebody who decided to be a policeman and risk their life because he wanted to be a policeman. And some other person, whether it be male or female, doesn't really matter, is doing the garbage, the sanitation, being a doctor like me. It doesn't really matter what you do. You know, people say, well, you know, a prejudice and whatever. The truth of the matter is, if you really take stock, even the lights of this show, the internet that we have here to watch this, the phones that were made in a different country, it's really amazing how people, I guess you could call it mankind, we can make it smaller, the community, or your family. It's amazing how much we do for each other and we take for granted. And I think the big problem is not having that common sense guide, or realizing that, you know, you could have all the money in the world, but if you were all alone, aside from being lonely, you would probably die because there'd be no one to pack the grocery store with food for you. There'd be no one to plow the street. There'd be no one to make your electricity. And you'd be running around all the buildings that you own with nothing. So really, I think the greatest wealth that we have in this world is mankind, is people, each other. And that's why I think this program is so beautiful, because it was applied in Colombia, where it actually reduced the crime, reduced the kidnapping, improved the economy, so much so that the president of Colombia received a Nobel Peace Prize, and the country became one that was undesirable, to where all over the world people were now investing in Colombia. And if we look at what's happened in the United States in the last year, I think there's a lot of turmoil that's occurred. It would be very beneficial to use the program. It's very easy to obtain. And this organization called thewaytohappiness.org. And the books are in many different languages, so they can be applied in different cultures. And they're available free of charge. So you can find out for yourself and see how you like it. So I want to play you another video. And this one actually happens to be with the government. Because, you know, there's been a lot of turmoil. Am I a Democrat? Am I a Republican? I'm a liberal. I'm this, I'm that. And all this conflict. Again, all this conflict. So let's take a look at a chapter from this book and see what it says about a government and supporting the government, regardless of the political party that you have affiliation with. Here we go. Engineer, please.
10. Support a government designed and run for all the people. Unscrupulous and evil men and groups can usurp the power of government and use it to their own ends. Government organized and conducted solely for self-interested individuals and groups gives the society a short lifespan. This imperils the survival of everyone in the land. It even imperils those who attempt it. History is full of such governmental deaths. Opposition to such governments usually just brings on more violence. But one can raise his voice in caution when such abuses are abroad. And one need not actively support such a government. Doing nothing illegal, it is yet possible, by simply withdrawing one's cooperation, to bring about an eventual reform. Even as this is being written, there are several governments in the world that are failing only because their people express their silent disagreement by simply not cooperating. These governments are at risk. Any untimely wind of mischance could blow them over. On the other hand, where a government is obviously working hard for all its people, rather than for some special interest group or insane dictator, one should support it to the limit. There is a subject called government.